All right, we're now 1 minute after 1. Let's go ahead and I'll call the meeting to order at 1:01.
Okay.
And we'll proceed. Keith, you may not have heard this. Lisa contacted me a little while ago, and she had what amounts to a last-minute, unavoidable work conflict starting literally at the time of the start of our meeting. So I don't expect her to be participating in the meeting. We do have 4 out of the 5 members, so we have a quorum, and I'll call the meeting to order. The agenda's been distributed. Does anybody have any additions, deletions, comments, whatever on the agenda?
I have 2 questions. Do you want to add the discussion about adding renters as members of committees?
Yeah, I was going to add that on the new business part, the 3rd item where it says discussion of how to proceed with other bylaws provisions. I was going to add at that point in time. But yeah, it'll be added at that point in time.
Okay. Do you want to do anything to review or address the status of the procedures you put together to incorporate the amendment to the bylaws for the referendum that was recently approved?
Say that one again, so I'm sure I understood what you're referring to.
You sent an email out that clearly defined the procedures that we need to follow since the referendum was approved by the owners to reduce the spending authority. And you said we had 30 days. So do we want to discuss the status of that?
Yeah, I kind of forgot about putting that on the agenda.
Jim, can
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Cammie Rogers. Can I bounce in here for a minute? We've been at the board level kind of banting back and forth whether there needs to be a motion filed to accept the results of the rest of the referendum. And there are several members who don't believe that we should do that, and it would be downright insulting to do that because the community has already passed the referendum, so why should we have any other further say? And my question to you then is, do we have a mechanism for looking at the actions that have been taken by previous boards? Is there a rolling list of what has been done? So for instance, if I were to look at the current bylaws and I see that the bylaws were written in 2008, is that memorialized anywhere, or is it just written on the bylaws?
I'm going to say it's basically memorialized on the bylaws. I joined the Bylaws and Resolutions Committee the summer of that referendum, so I did not participate in the drafting of the comprehensive amendment at that time. After the amendment, or after the approval of the annual meeting, or as part of the balloting leading up to the meeting, the committee proofread what was submitted in the referendum, and there, for whatever reason, there were a number of formatting errors, and there was one typographical error, and all of that was corrected. I don't remember, and I probably do not have any meeting minutes or anything like that. It indicates whether the Bylaws and Resolutions Committee effectively approved the final draft to go to printing. And I do not recall any of the process more than that. I guess I can just stop there and say that's about as much as I can add to what happened in 2008.
Okay.
We did a proofreading. As I said, there were a number of formatting errors where you have these lead in to a section. You have a line, an underline, and period or no period, depending on what follows. Sometimes the underline extended across the draft several spaces, that kind of thing. And there was, in fact, an error in a reference, the draft reference to a section that was the wrong one section in the draft referenced another section, which was in fact the wrong section. Something like 5.13A should have been 5.14A, and for example, that kind of thing. But it was proofread, and it was okay to go to the printers. And what you see on the association website is the formal printer copy with the cover sheet on it. I have a copy of the last version of the bylaws prior to 2008, and it is simply a Word document. And I don't know if a more formal cover sheet printed version existed at that time. The only thing I want to add or continue with is that the pre-2008 bylaws had, I'm going to refer to it as an index of all of the changes that had been made to those bylaws. The index started out with a statement to the effect that in 1982, whatever date, the board of directors approved a complete revision of the bylaws. And then following that by date is every revision to the bylaws that occurred up through the year 2000, which was the last actual amended revision of the bylaws. And I recommend that we continue that practice, that we continue to have an index to the bylaws.
And Bob, I'm sorry, Jim, getting back to your question, Bob, are you of the mind or opinion that the board should approve of the referendum vote? How do you guys feel about that?
Well, when a board that I was previously on, we changed our bylaws, and the attorney said we had 30 days to record it with the court that the bylaws had been changed. So we followed that procedure. What I looked at Jim's was very similar to what my attorney told us at that time.
Right.
And again, go ahead.
Well, the approval or not approval by the board and any proofreading, formatting, whatever, cover sheet, that kind of thing, is one issue. The issue that Bob is addressing is that they must be filed in the Homeowner Association depository in Snow Hill.
Right.
And that's I think it's a 30-day provision. We're not close to the 30 days yet, but we will be.
Well, yeah, and I guess I'm seeking your guidance, Jim, because this has become kind of a point of discussion among the board members. And let me just rephrase the question one more time. After the referendum has been passed by the community, does the board then need to go back and approve not the referendum, but make a motion to accept the referendum outcome to be put in the bylaws? Am I clear?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think you are, and I don't have any easy answer for that. I would say at a minimum, the board should have before it the final bylaws with the amendment incorporated, and approve that this is the correct outcome of the amendment process, meaning the petition and amendment process, and that it be filed in the depository in Snow Hill. I would think that would be a minimum approach, but going back further and saying you have to meet, or not meet, but yeah, meet, but you have to then, before that even, say that the petition and the balloting is over. This is the result that's approved to go into the bylaws. I honestly don't know how to answer that. That would be, in my comments, that would be two steps. First, you have to say, okay, update the bylaws. Then you would have to say, when you got in front of you the final copy, ready to be filed. Okay, this is the final copy. Send it to Snow Hill. That's two steps. I'm not sure that's a lot of work. I don't. At this point in time, you would have to go into the minutes of the board meetings subsequent to the annual meeting of 2008 to really find out if the board took any action. At one point in time, up until maybe the new website, and Josh, you may be able to answer this, how available would those be? I think that the bylaws records on that website back, whatever it's been now, a year ago or less, may have gone back that far. I don't really remember. And I think now we're just back to about 2015 or so. But what you really have to do would be to go back to 2008, start with the first meeting after the annual meeting, and work your way forward for 6 months or so to see if there's any reference to any action on the fact that the bylaws were a new version of the bylaws was approved. That's probably the best answer to give right now as to how far back anybody wants to try to go into the archives of the association to see what, if anything, the board did subsequent to that comprehensive amendment in 2008.
Okay.
I personally do not recall anything in particular, but that doesn't mean there wasn't something. I don't know, Josh, what do you think about the possibility of getting back that far? Do you, in what was on the prior website, is that something that's readily available or available?
I believe Michelle has all those records now, and they should be pretty easy to get. But yeah, the current website, we go back 5 years on board minutes.
Yeah, I know at one time there are board meeting minutes that probably go back to in paper form, that go back to the very beginning. Who knows where they are now? And that's not necessarily relevant what we're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe Michelle Bennett has all those.
I'll hook up Josh this week and see if I can solve that problem before the 15th board meeting. So thank you. I know we need to go back and approve the agenda, and I jumped ahead and I apologize for that, but it's good to see everybody. I just got a little antsy. I'm sorry.
I was going to say something else. Okay, what I will do, I have message archives that go back a long time, and it's possible that if it goes back as far as 2008, I know I go back anywhere into 2010, 2009. I'll go back in there and see if I can find anything in there that's relevant to what may have happened after the 2008 approval, and I'll let you know one way or another, Camilla, whether I have anything or not, or if I do, what I have.
Much appreciated, Jim. Thank you.
Okay, anything else on the
Jim?
Yeah.
Let's get a sound check from Laura.
Oh, I went into settings. I don't know if it worked or not, so we'll see.
Yeah, you're a little bit louder.
A little bit louder. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Worst case, I'll type my comments, but
We can hear you.
Okay. Okay, on the agenda, I've already noted that on the new business where the how to proceed item will include the addition of whether or not renters, let me rephrase it as that for the time being, can be committee members. Under the present bylaws, they cannot, but we can wait until we get to that. And as far as the question on the proceeding with the recent bylaws revision, I think we probably already discuss that as far as we need to go. How's that sound?
That's fine with me.
Okay. All right. Any other agenda comments, additions, deletions, that sort of thing? Okay. If not, I'm going to say the agenda is approved and we're going to continue on. I'm looking for anybody else that's on here for possible comments. I see we have Greg Ellison has joined us, a participant. We can, I don't have it on the agenda, but I think we're trying to commonly give Keith a chance to make any comments at the end. And Keith also, at any time during our discussion, I think we can say that you're feel free to ask a question or clarification. It's not such a formal parliamentary procedure that someone who is not a committee member, whether it's a journalist or otherwise, cannot in some way participate. I think we all can handle that. Otherwise, there aren't any public comments, so let's go on from there. Okay, unfinished business. Camilla, I guess this is where we come back to you. There's a number of resolutions.
You forgot to approve the minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I've checked off that instead of approval of the agenda.
I make a motion to approve.
Any questions? Any questions on the minutes, or do we have a motion to approve them?
I have a motion to approve.
I
Okay,
second.
Bob. What was the second?
I second, Keith.
Okay. Any discussion?
No.
Okay, let's go ahead and take a vote on this. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right, let's say it's unanimous approval. Okay, now that I got straightened out there. On the unfinished business, Camilla, we have these, this shows as 4 resolutions that they're actually board policy resolutions, and it would be the board's responsibility to have them reviewed, either whether the board wants to review them themselves or farm them out to another entity, whether it be staff or a committee, to review, make recommendations or whatever. But essentially they are board policy resolutions, and they come to the board for review. And we have them out there, and we need to make some progress on what that status is.
Now, Jim, is this any different than what you and Doug and I have been doing on the bylaws work group?
I'm not sure how to answer that. What was done on the work group would not necessarily have considered the provisions of each of those resolutions. For example, okay. FO2 is the budget development resolution, and I guess I'm sort of making a suggestion that resolution, in addition to being something that the board sets, is really what the not just the board, but it's what the staff has to work toward. The general manager has to initiate actions. There has to be various things done in preparation for him to begin his budget preparation or his budget review and preparation.
Okay.
But in the same thing, F03 in particular, let me make a particular comment on that one. The treasurer's report for the last several meetings, maybe as far back into the end of last year, and also I'm going to misstate this, a treasurer's report, not treasurer, I'm sorry. Our financial
Steve Phillips.
Manager, Steve Phillips, reporting lists a reserve fund as drainage. And if you look at the reserve fund resolution F03, drainage is not one of the listed resolutions, and the bylaws, again, I don't have the reference here immediately available. I don't need to look it up. The bylaws require that reserve funds be specifically designated and any criteria special about them be designated in a resolution, and F02 is that resolution. When we went to the new capital requirements addition to F02 about 2 years ago now, this coming fall, that was an addition to F02. So we don't pick up drainage, but yet we're picking it up in the treasurer's report as a separate reserve fund.
Okay.
That's the message behind that one, if I can put it that way.
No, that's fine. And I will get these policies directed. We have had some discussions about them, but there's not been any conclusion to that work. So I will do that again, Jim.
Okay, the two M resolutions, 5 and 7, one of those is has to do with bulkhead repair as well as waterway maintenance. And that, again, that's a suggestion. That's a candidate for review by the Maritime Committee, and the M0, I think it's M05. I may have them reversed. But
Is it M or N?
M.
Okay. M05. Okay.
M is in Mike.
Okay.
The other one has to do with the police department taking custody of animals running loose, for lack of a better description. That would be of interest to the police department. The history on that one is that when it was proposed, this goes back 10 years ago now, when the prior resolutions were being reviewed and converted to the new format, it was proposed that corresponding resolution be deleted because animal control was a county responsibility. And the chief of police at the time wanted to have Ocean Pines to declare its authority to charge maintaining any animal, particularly dogs we're talking about, that was taken into custody, because there were times when the animal control people were never going to get there in time to do anything about it. The police department would take the dog into custody, and then at least some of the time, if not all the time, the owner was found at some point in time later. But the chief wanted to make sure that there was reimbursement for those expenses. So that's why that resolution has continued to exist. Whether we still need it, change it, whatever is the question. It's just a routine review so we don't get these things out of date. That's the story.
So just to recapitulate here, that F02 and F03, and I know we've had this conversation before, and I did something and then I don't think I closed the loop on this, but F02, F03 should go to Steve Phillips and John Viola for review and updating as necessary. M05 and M07 have to do with bulkhead repair. And then the police department one is the other one that requires review, and I need to get those policies off to those respective.
Yeah, that pretty well summarizes it.
Okay, and if you can put that on the agenda for next month, I'll give you an update on where we are.
Okay, anybody have any further comment on those? Okay, if not, let's go on to the next item, which is the review of I'll call it draft or red line draft of the C04. This is our resolution, and what is the red line draft is what we discussed at the last meeting as a proposed. I'm going to say proposed at this point in time, addition to our resolution. The C resolutions are basically setting forth the duties and other details of the respective committees. If you go to the bylaws, the committee section in the bylaws makes provision for the board of directors to set forth this kind of information for every committee, and this happens to be our resolution, which we reviewed. The red line is that we add on that 3A, and when appropriate, complying with quote resolution amendment procedures that are within are in an attachment to resolution B01. B01, of course, is the resolution on resolutions. That includes an attachment as to how we work our way through, our committee, as well as those who are proposing resolutions, as well as the board of directors when it considers not resolutions, amendments to resolutions, as well as new resolutions. It's just simply to add in there that there is such a detailed, relatively detailed process, and that we ourselves expect to follow it, and we want to have it followed as well. The step after this, I think I indicated this in a message earlier. If this is agreeable to all of us, what would happen next? What happens next to get this approved is it has to go to the board of directors. It would go through you, Camilla, for addition to the agenda at a board meeting, and it goes through the two reading process.
Okay.
So, do we have any further discussion on this? We pretty well agreed to it last time. Is this what we want to go forward with? Keith, are you?
So when would it not be appropriate? We have the word in there, the wording, when appropriate. So when would it not be appropriate?
It's a good question. I can't think of a reason why it would not be appropriate.
As appropriate probably should be there rather than the when.
Or do we need those two words at all? Could it just say by complying with the resolution or and complying? I'm just curious because wording like that typically is a loophole.
Yeah.
And if there's
Good
no
point.
application for an inappropriate situation, then maybe we should just remove it.
Yeah, just say and complying with.
Okay, that's fine. It's fine with me. Laura, you have any thoughts on that?
Nope, I totally agree with that.
Okay.
With the recommended amendment, not with
Amendment to it, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go ahead. We normally frequently, let's put it that way, in the history of this committee, actually go through a motion and second and vote for approval. But let's go ahead. Let's say as amended to read and complying with. Let's go ahead with anybody with do I have a motion to approve as amended for submittal to the board of directors?
I make a motion to amend the wording and put and in compliance with for approval.
Okay. Any
Turns compliant to compliance with, right?
I think so. And in compliance, yes, in compliance with the resolution amendment procedures.
I second that.
Okay, any further discussion?
Nope.
All right, let's all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's approved. Bob, could you mark
I'll
that
do
up
it.
again? Send it over to me.
Will
And
do.
what I will do, Camilla, I will attach the approved red line to a message to you formally indicating that it was accepted at the committee, and we're submitting it for approval to the board in accordance with resolution B01.
Okay.
Now, again, that just has to go on the agenda as a first reading and then a second reading. I don't know, it may save a little bit of effort for you, kind of cutting corners a little bit. I could include Michelle on this because she will need to have a copy of it for the board packet when it's on the agenda. So
Okay. I don't know if it's too late to get anything on for the 15th. I think not. So if you could send that over to her within the next couple of days, Jim, that would be grand.
Okay, and again, it's not holding anything up. So if you got a jammed agenda or if things are getting pushed, that it gets set out to the meeting after this coming one
Okay.
is not a problem. But we just want to take it to the next step. That's all.
All right, that sounds good.
Okay. All right. Let's move on. Hang on. Let me check off. Hopefully in the right order here. Now we're into new business. The first item on the new business is our discussion of the bylaws search committee provisions 502B and 502C of the bylaws. This again comes from the bylaws and bylaws work group as one of the items on there. And it was picked out as one of the first items to consider. What we're looking at here on the screen, if you see it, is what I have referred to as the ranking list. At the last committee meeting, it was requested that I put together something that ranks the order of call it order of importance of the provisions in the work groups list of topics to review. This came out number one. The ranking is not just necessarily in the order of importance, it's also kind of in the order of difficulty. But what we did, and this is just a summary again, is send out to the search committee, the elections committee, and the communications committee, based on our conversation at the last meeting, a series of questions regarding the future of the search committee. Search committee has not been functioning particularly well over the years since it was created in the bylaws, and that's in the 2008 bylaws. There's been several years when it has not met at all, several years when the membership of the committee was less than the 5 that's specified in the resolution. A year ago, the lack of search committee could probably be understood because of the pandemic situation that was developing at the time. And that I think probably affected it to at least to a degree this year as well. So that's the background. We sent out our questions and asked for responses. We've got responses back from 2 of the committees, elections and communications. Search has advised me that they're working on their response. It's my understanding that the response will be a part of a required search committee report. There is a required search committee report due to the board no later than June 30th after every election. That's in the M09 resolution, the search committee resolution. My understanding that's under review or the draft is under review by the 2 search committee members at this time, and we should be getting it soon. I would think. I hope. So we don't have full responses at this point in time. Now, the responses from elections and communications is, I think, fairly clear, if not entirely clear, that they want to limit themselves to their specific topic in the case of communications, to be able to communicate with regard to what's going on in the search process and perhaps the election process as well. I don't know that that's in their response, but to be able to communicate information about the time of events that are taking place and not be in any way participating other than that in a search process. And to a similar extent, the Elections Committee comments, I think, can be summarized that they want to narrow their responsibilities to specifically conduct of the election itself and not get involved in anything involving the search for candidates, so that there's no possibility of there being a conflict of interest, an appearance of possibly favoring a particular candidate by virtue of contact with that candidate in the search process, that kind of concern on their part. So I think what we're, Josh, if you could you scroll down to the search committee part? And I'm gonna just make this last comment and ask for everybody else's comments. At the bottom here, you see a series of questions that we pose to them. And I'm not going to read through them, but each of those questions, well, I guess there's no question mark at the end, but each of those areas in which we're soliciting comment are specifically related to a provision in the bylaws. The one-year term is not stated specifically, but the committee is appointed in February, and then there's another committee or a new committee appointed the next February. So it's essentially a one-year term, and the committee effectively goes out of business upon submission of the report that was mentioned a couple of minutes ago. And then there's a provision in there about the candidates are supposed to get their application form from the search committee and so on. I'm not going to, again, I want to stop. I don't want to keep talking about this. Those are specific provisions which we've asked for comment about. And as it looks from our request for input, we very well could be looking at what kind of changes can be made in the bylaws or recommend changes in the bylaws on the kind of provisions that are identified here, or add other provisions that may seem to be beneficial to it, and continue with the search committee. That right now, that appears to be that is my feel for the direction we are probably going. So I want to stop right there and allow anyone else here that has any comment or any feel for where we're standing on this search committee, what to do about the search committee question that is involved here.
So I have a question then. And because I'm newer to the committee, this might just be more of a clarification comment, but why for that particular committee is it a one-year term then? Why was that initially started that way, and how successful has it been? Versus, like if I'm doing my first term here with this committee, it's for a minimum of 3 years, right?
Yes.
I did commit myself to 3 years, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Lucky you.
But consistency might be a better trait for the search committee. If there are people out there who like to talk and recruit and things like that, why would they be prohibited or forced to have to keep applying to be on that committee year after year, versus be like the other committees and have, an initial 3-year commitment or 2-year even, and then fill as needed. So if somebody says, in 2 years, they can't do a 3-year commitment, then we go and fill that, state that we have an opening on that committee. Is there any reasoning why this particular committee started out with this 1 year? I mean, I understand, because elections are new every year, but why would the search committee members need to have to keep rotating all the time?
Okay, the basic reason for what I referred to as a 1 year term, the basic reason is that the bylaws provision says that a search committee is appointed by the president. That's not necessarily the right words. The bylaws specifically say that the committee is appointed no later than February 1st of every year. So although that does not explicitly say it's limited to a 1 year term, it effectively it does. That doesn't say that the same members can't be reappointed the next year. I think that maybe in one case, at least several were reappointed the following year. But the basic reason is that the bylaws, it literally say, okay, Josh has got it up there. Not later than February 1st each year, the president shall, subject to confirmation, appoint a search committee not less than 5 members, and so on. And then what happens in the resolution, the M09 resolution, there's a report required from the committee by June 30th regarding what they did during their search process, and that, for all practical purposes, the committee has gone out of business at that point in time. Now there is, I don't want to get into making suggestions as to what kind of revisions to the bylaws can be made, but a consideration involving what you're talking about is perhaps going the same way that the elections committee is specified in the bylaws. The bylaws create an elections committee, but the bylaws refer to the elections. The bylaws, when it creates the elections committee in section 5.0 something, refers to the section in the bylaws regarding committees. And in that section, it says the board will specify the duties, the terms, and whatever other information for all of the committees. And that kind of reference could be made for the search committee, and then the board by resolution would take into consideration the kind of thing you're talking about. The length of term.
Well, because I know in the PTA bylaws stuff that I do, our nominating committees have, in our bylaws, it states what month the nominating committee has to be formed by prior to the elections, et cetera. So that, to me, this search committee is equal to my nominating committees. But in our bylaws, it also states in general what constitutes a term, even for our committee chairs and everything. So I guess I would have to go back and look. Is it a general comment that all committees start with, a 3-year term or whatever? But I do understand that elections and search committee are slightly different than the other committees. So maybe it needs to stay written as is. I don't know.
I think that the issue here is that, and it certainly has been the case since I've been on the board, is that the search committee has been completely dysfunctional, and I think that one of the questions that this committee needs to answer is, do we want to continue with this, or do we just have people who are interested in running for the board go fill out an application? And if we have a search committee, is there a preliminary interview that is done by the search committee? How would that all really work? Because it hasn't worked the last 2 years. And from my understanding, particularly from talking to Steve Habinger, it hasn't worked for at least the last 5 years. Would that be correct to assume, Jim?
I would be hesitant on the 5 years because I just don't remember specifically back 5 years. I think I have in my files a search committee report for perhaps year 2017 and 2018 that was reasonably, either 2017 or 2018. It was relatively comprehensive. And then I think I also have a search committee report that goes back, one or two reports that go back further toward the 2000, it would have been 2009 when the committee was first formed, for the first election that it was formed. But yes, I think it's clear that there's been a general feeling, at least, if not specific feeling, that the search committee has not been a functioning, thoroughly functioning, consistently functioning committee.
I think part of it, I think part of that is the miscommunication or the unclear role of the search committee, because as Camilla just said, are they doing, or are they just trying to recruit and say, hey, go fill out an application? Or are they actually, what I have experience with is as a true nominating committee, as the ones who collect, the applications, look at them, and then recommend. And recommend.
Once again, I have not disconnected my phone. Hang on.
Who might be, considered good candidates for the slate. And that doesn't mean that, not all the candidates would be considered and all of that, but what is the specific role? Are they truly interviewing, or are they just recruiting and saying, hey, we think you'd be great, go run, but here's how you go do it, go complete the application, and then they're done. That's all they do. Because is it, I don't know, I forgot now, who's the one vetting the applications and making sure that they actually qualify to be a valid candidate?
I'll answer the last question first, and that's the person who does the vetting is the secretary. Right. Secretary gets the applications and goes through the qualification, not a resume qualification. The specific qualifications are in the bylaws. You have to be eligible to vote. You have to have been a member of the association since January 1st. And that pretty well covers it without going back and double checking. But let me take just a minute or two to make sure we're all on the same page as the history of the search committee provision. In the bylaws that existed prior to 2008, there was in fact a nominating committee. And on paper, that committee was to go out and literally nominate persons to go on the ballot. You didn't get on the ballot unless that committee nominated you. And you could get on the ballot in a petition process if the committee didn't nominate you and you wanted to be on the ballot. There was a petition process, so many signatures on a petition, and you could get on the ballot by a given date in the election process. That nominating committee, and I cannot speak from personal experience, although I did live here prior to 2008, that nominating committee was nominating in name only. If it had ever literally nominated individuals, and those were the individuals that went on the ballot, I can't say for sure. I don't have any knowledge of that. And it was determined at the time the bylaws were revised that something had to be done to change that. And an additional element to the nominating committee was that the nominating committee, this is my phrasing, the nominating committee was authorized to nominate only members in good standing. And there's a long definition of what good standing meant that's been dropped. But they nominated people. You had to get onto the ballot, and those persons that they nominated had to be in good standing. So the nominating committee actually did the screening. And there was no discussion of whether they were nominating people that they thought were the best or not the best, and reviewing personal resumes. Is this a person suitable for the committee or the board? I'm sorry, suitable for the board or not? All that was undefined. Now, the resulting provision now creating a search committee in the bylaws is a result of that dissatisfaction with the nominating committee process. And the various provisions you see in there now are new provisions with regard to the candidate search and application process. Among them is the current requirement that the vetting of eligibility be on the ballot. What used to be in good standing is now is defined basically eligible to vote and a resident or an owner since January 1st. And your vote hasn't been suspended by the board for some violation. Those provisions are the result of an on-paper nominating committee that didn't function. Now, as with regard to what is the committee supposed to do? How is it supposed to conduct its business? That is in Resolution M09. And M09, and I'm just going to paraphrase from memory, M09 has words in it. I think it actually literally says, shall cast as wide a net as possible for candidates and not make judgments on who is most qualified. For example, on resume basis, who would make the best candidate, or not candidate, but member of the board of directors. The search committee in Resolution 09 is specifically not to be doing that kind of thing. It's supposed to be going out in the community association and trying to find candidates, certainly candidates that are eligible to vote and have lived here for, at that point in time, be approximately 6 to 8 months, and are eligible to vote. Okay, we've got it up here now. We can, I don't know that we need to read through it. It says, well, at the beginning, the roles stimulate community interest in the forthcoming board elections, solicit candidates from the broad spectrum of Ocean Pines membership, provide information, et cetera, et cetera. I don't want to try to read further on. That resolution, I'm going to choose my words carefully here, was a little bit difficult to get put in place after the 2008 bylaws created a search committee. There were those who didn't think a resolution was really necessary, and a resolution was drafted and kind of sat on out of sight for maybe a year to almost 2 years before it was again brought before what may have been a more receptive board of directors, and finally approved by the board. And I'm going to get kind of personal here. That resolution was drafted by myself and a then board liaison by the name of Dave Stevens, who's unfortunately deceased now. We both were very adamant in our belief that a resolution directing the search committee in-house to be operated was necessary. And in particular, those words that we read were a broad spectrum of the community and the generate interest in candidacy. Those were important parts of the overall search process that were not covered in the bylaws, and were not the choosing the right person for the board was not excluded from the prior nominating committee, and we felt that it was important that we make that make that clear that that was the search committee's function. Again, I've spent too much time talking here. That's the background, from my personal experience at least, of the provisions that we're dealing with in the search committee and why we have a search committee. And again, that's just background. Hopefully, I've kind of has some background and useful information. But that's just background to where we are. Keith, you got something?
Yeah. So am I correct in that we have not received feedback yet from the search committee on the questions we submitted?
That's correct.
So is there anything without that feedback that we're able to do today? And if not, should we table this until we get that feedback?
I think we have to table it. We can. I guess one thing I wanted to say when we got to this item, and we're going to have to, and say it sounds to me like we're going to have to effectively wait because the search committee was going to be key input anyway. A decision point, and I think, Camilla, I'm trying to remember who all said what. I think it was you, Camilla, that what good does a search committee do? What more, and this is my phrasing here, what more do we need to do to put out there the application process, information about an application process, what the duties are, kind of the same kind of thing that the Communications Committee and the EC, the Elections Committee, were talking about a module on the Ocean Pines Academy, Residence Academy. That kind of activity, what more do we need to do for candidacy process within the association? It's kind of a choice between that. I'm not trying to make any final decisions, obviously. It's kind of a choice between that and somehow going forward with the bylaws as they currently read, which most people don't seem to want to have, or some revisions to the existing bylaws to try to make it better. I'm getting some conversations somewhere. I don't know if it's me or I don't. That seems to go away. Well,
Jim, I think in answer to your question, and more specifically to Keith's question, I am not aware that a search committee was ever formed this year, and I'm pretty sure that no work has been done by a search committee. It's my understanding that Stuart Lackernick, that Frank Daly, that all the people that have submitted applications and have been cleared by me with the help from Ruth Ann, did that on their own accord. They weren't approached by anybody. They wanted to run and therefore filled out an application and did so. So
okay.
I don't think there's a report to be given. To tell you the truth, I will be happy to investigate that further, but it's my understanding that there was no committee this year.
Well, there's a 2-person committee was formed, and they were active. I know they've had some activity. Exactly
Okay.
what activity, I don't know. And I've been in communication with the chair of the committee. So there has been a 2-person committee. The extent of their activities, I don't know.
Okay.
Now, just as a comment that reinforces what you said, historically, again, I don't think you can come up with any hard data, hard objective data, but historically, it appears that the majority of candidates made their decision on their own without any contact with a search committee. I think you can find, again, there's no data, no report, that kind of thing, but the reasonably accurate story is that the majority of people who apply for candidacy do so on their own, obtain their own application, and submit their application, and there not being any, maybe not even any contact at all with a search committee member or the committee itself. That's a fairly common story. Let's put it that way. Now, there have been a couple of search committee reports. I think Josh had one, the 2018 up there. I think that one lists the number of people that the search committee may have talked to, but it also, I think, lists the number of candidates that resulted. But that number of candidates doesn't necessarily mean that the candidates came about by search committee activities. But at any rate, that again, Camilla, your understanding or impression, whatever, of the operation of the search committee is the common understanding. That it has not been significantly instrumental in obtaining candidates for the election.
So is the search committee then, is their primary goal in recruiting to fill that clause that says with at least two, how's that worded? Two candidates more than the amount of open positions. So like if two positions are open for election, we actually need 4 candidates on the slate. So is that their role really? Because like you said, I agree. I think the majority of people, if they want to run, they will make the effort and go apply. But is it then the search committee to note that, okay, by such and such date, we only had 2 candidates put in and we have 2 open spots, but this clause says we really need to have 4 candidates. Are they the ones going out trying to recruit an additional 2 candidates?
Well, there's a provision in the bylaws that says if there are not, or there is not, whatever, 2 more than the vacancies, the board can extend the candidacy period. And it also says, whatever it says, okay, he's got the additional, if the number of candidates on the list submitted to the elections committee is less than 2 more than the number, the board shall attempt to solicit additional candidates. And it goes on to have some more information about that. And it also says that the search committee is to try to get at least 2 more than the number of vacancies. Well, that really, in order for the search committee to really fulfill that, they have to know who has put in an application. And I don't want to get around, I don't want to get back in the weeds here, but in M09, we had to put in there a kind of a loophole to the provision that says the search committee is to provide the secretary with a list of candidates. Well, they're not going to know who the list of candidates is unless they have the applications. And we knew, this is back at the time M09 was drafted, we knew that people were bypassing the search committee and putting in their own application directly to the secretary, or at least taking it to the admin office and saying, okay, here's my application, get it to the secretary or to the right place. Well, we put in there a provision regarding having a box of the application to be deposited in, and then from there the search committee could take the applications and make a list out of it. But that the search committee is tasked with getting 2 more, maybe that's not doesn't really need to be in there. So if we're going to have a search committee, they ought to be out there getting as many as they can get, and whatever they get is what it is. If it's not 2 more or it's 10 more, it's what it is. So what is relevant is the provision that if it's not 2 more, that if there are not more than 2 applications and vacancies, the board can extend the application process. That's the relevant point. That gets into the kind of thing where I mentioned, if we're going forward with a search committee, perhaps there are changes that streamline somewhat the search process, the search provisions in the bylaws. I'm really trying to avoid getting into the weeds and into the details. But why does an application have to come from the search committee? They make it known how you get an application, and I think the information published this time does say that. We did have some public election process announcements, search candidacy announcements. Let me try to kind of summarize, and we can get off and get on with something we can do some more substantive discussions on until we get the search committee input. I think we're going to be sitting in a situation with either we're going to go forward with the search committee or we're not. If we go forward with the search committee, do we need to make some changes to make it better in the bylaws? If we're not, what takes its place? And without getting into a decision-making statement, I have my doubts that it would be really searching for the right word here. It would really be acceptable to a broad part of the community, whether it be a broad part of the board of directors, and Camilla, you have a better insight on this than I do on this situation at this time, to do away completely with a search committee function. In other words, to take the membership of the association out of being any kind of a participant in trying to develop who becomes our board of directors. When I say develop, I want to make sure I'm not implying choosing who would be the better people, the person or persons to be on the board. I'm skeptical of the reception to doing away with a search committee entirely, but that again, I'm getting out ahead of myself here probably, and too far into the details of what we're talking about. Anyway, we've kind of gone on here. There are other things we need to talk about or can talk about on this that help clarify where we're at. Laura, I think you're okay.
Yeah, Camilla has her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, we got through that, and I'm down. I'm good.
Okay. Anybody else? I'm looking at the time here, so we've got a ways to go, and we're running along. All right, let's put that one to bed until we get something from the search committee. And as soon as I get something, I will send it over to you. What my understanding is that their comments will be in their search report that has to go to the president of the board for distribution to the board. And it's in the draft form to be reviewed. As soon as I get it, again, I don't know whether it will be specific reference to the questions we asked, or we'll have to read the report to understand how it applies to the questions we ask. I don't know. We won't know until we see it. As soon as I get it, I will forward immediately on to everyone.
Hey,
Okay,
real quick,
yeah.
we're getting some feedback from Bob. Bob, if you could mute yourself until you're ready to talk, I think that'll take care of the feedback.
Okay. The next new business item is the Architectural Review Committee. Real brief, the background again on this is that there's a provision in the bylaws at section 5.13H, and just for the heck of it, I'll open it up and read it so that Looks like Josh might be scrolling through here faster than I can get my bylaws open. Okay, okay, Josh got it highlighted now. The board may establish and enforce policies, including fees and procedures for the Environmental Control Committee, parentheses, Architectural Review Committee. The declaration of restrictions all refer to an Environmental Control Committee. Several years ago, I guess it's probably as much as 15 years or more ago, the committee was renamed the Architectural Review Committee. I think the reasoning was to make the name sound more toward what it really does with regard to improvements on the on individual lots and as well as some authority regarding various other restriction provisions in the various declarations of restrictions. There is a provision, and what Josh has highlighted here is the item that I ranked this item number 2 on our ranking list. There is a provision in what some people refer to as the original Ocean Pines declarations of restrictions, that the decisions of the committee, I'm going to just refer to ARC committee instead of ECC just to keep it current terminology. The decisions of the ARC committee are final. Now, in this in particular, the question that we're confronted with here deals in particular with that. And that is the authority or the limits of the authority, however you want to express it, that the board has with regard to the activities or the operation of the Architectural Review Committee. There is a split among the sections. Sections that were created, the DRs are dated 1995 and beyond or later. I don't have the exact number in front of me. It's about 6 to 8 sections. That decisions are final phrase is qualified by an appeals process. That a member who has submitted something to the ARC committee and has been rejected has an appeal to the board of directors. Now that appeal is that the process for the appeal is to be documented in the ARC guidelines. That's what the DR says in proper wording. That has never been done. There is no provision in the ARC guidelines to appeal a decision by the ARC committee, regardless of what section you're in. Again, the basic question is, does this bylaws provision in some manner overstep the authority that the DRs give to the Architectural Review Committee, and its decisions are final in particular? This is a kind of a question I think has been around for years. Mm-hmm. It's always been kind of a low level discussion. There have been various approaches advanced to whether that's a literal interpretation, decisions are final or not. One of them is that the ARC committee is appointed by the board. So if the board doesn't like what it's doing, it'll disband the committee or take over. I'm not sure the DRs allow this, but it'll at least disband the existing members and appoint new members. So that way they have control over the committee, and the board effectively has final say anyway. Now that's kind of a loose interpretation of saying that the board has control. At any rate, the question to be resolved is this provision really a violation of the DRs? It's inconsistent with, is it inconsistent with the DRs? And what the work groups have suggested is we ask the board to give us permission to contact the attorney to consult with him. And without Camilla, we did send that email to you, and you responded that you'd get that and have our questions sent on to Jeremy Tucker. Where are we on that, I guess, is the situation. Uh-oh, Camilla's frozen on my screen. No, Camilla, can you hear me?
Camilla's
I
muted.
can't-
There.
I muted myself because the dog started barking. I will go back through my email again, but I do not to date have a response from that, Jim, and I will rattle Jeremy's cage to do that.
Okay. Something I was going to add to that. I'm distracted by my own noise background here too. Well, okay. Okay, what the intention is, quite our questions to the attorney would be forward to him for him to respond back in basically an email response situation. Is that correct way to say that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm going to make another note in my notes that I'm keeping here to ask him about that again. And what our inquiry is can the bylaws committee directly communicate with the attorney to have a read on this rather than going through other venues? Is that correct, Jim?
No, that would be correct. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that's what I put out to him.
Okay. In the meantime, for the other committee members, somewhere, I think I did not try to drag up the email. I think I have it here, but like as usual, I got more stuff here that I can keep track of. That listed our questions. I honestly don't remember now if I copied the board. If I didn't, I should have. What I will do is recirculate that either for the first time or the second time that indicates the questions that we would want to ask him to make sure that we have all had a chance to contribute to that. I may have put the kinds of questions as opposed to specifically these questions, but I will do that promptly. And if there are other questions so that we have them available and I can forward them to Camilla.
Okay, that would be great. And then I will get them on to Jeremy. And can we decide we're going to do that by like 2 weeks from now?
Oh yeah.
I'll put that on my calendar.
I'll if I didn't, I should have. If I did, I will recirculate it so that we can once and for all final make comments as to what we're asking him to look into and why. And then I'll get it to Camilla, and we'll let's make sure we'll adhere to a no later than 2 weeks from today. I would hope we can get it done well before that.
And Jim, I have a folder just for you on my computer with everything that you've sent me. So I'll look back in there and see if I've got it as well.
Okay.
Hey, Jim,
Yeah.
on your letter, your email of 5/4, requesting that, the board is not listed unless you send it blind.
No, it wouldn't have gone to board. Did it go to each of the committee members?
Yes,
Okay, it should have gone to Camilla and probably copies to each of the committee members.
yeah, it only went to Camilla and our group.
Oh, okay. Let me recycle the questions and put down a due date like a week from today, and we'll get it to Camilla by promptly thereafter. I'll get that done. You'll have it out. I'll have it out to you in the next day or so. I can get it done probably tonight if I sit down and do it. All right.
Hey, Jim,
Yeah.
so in that question specifically regarding this issue, did we ask or did we address the fact that there's two different names for the ARC that appear to be documented? You know, the Environmental Control Committee and the Architectural Review Committee, and that it's two different names that appear to be documented names, and then therefore the rule about not overriding them may have originally applied to the ECC, but when the name was changed to the ARC, maybe the mission for the ARC was changed as well, and that rule no longer applied. In other words, a question to the lawyer could get messy here because we're calling this thing two different things, and maybe it originally had two different missions. So was that part of our question?
No, that can be added to it, but the name designation change was applied only to the architectural, what I'm going to refer to as architectural review guidelines. I don't have a copy of the guidelines as they existed before that name change, but the name change came only in our non-governing documentation, if I can call it that. So I can't. The attorney would have to be the one that would make some kind of a comment on this. That what impact is there, if any, that we have in our declaration of restrictions? That's where the ECC or ARC committee now. All of the declarations of restrictions use the term ECC or Environmental Control Committee. The only place that you're going to see the term used, Architectural Review Committee, is on the Architectural Review Committee guidelines, or the ARC guidelines. And in any internal documentation, like there's an ARC committee resolution, C whatever it is, and it's entitled ARC Committee or Architectural Review Committee. And any reference to it in the Board of Directors meetings or resolutions, today we're going to be using the ARC designation. So it's used only in current daily usage is almost the way to say it. What impact that change or that usage has, that can be added to a question to the attorney.
The Architectural Review Guidelines document, the published document, is that considered, what did you call, a non-governing document?
Yeah, I'm going to get kind of technical here. There are three governing documents in an incorporated, let me put it that way, incorporated homeowners association. And this is a provision in the Homeowners Association Act, only it's not, it doesn't say that, what I just said. The governing documents of a homeowners association are a recorded covenants, and in particular, that would, whatever name you give it to it, recorded covenants or covenants in a deed. There's the provision in the HOA Act lists several different kinds of documents, but the applicable document to our homeowners association is the declarations of restrictions for the various sections. But as a corporation, our governing documents are the bylaws and the charter. So we have three governing documents: the DRs for each section, the charter for the association as a corporation, and the bylaws, which are required of a corporation. The architectural review guidelines are not recorded anywhere in the land records. The bylaws are not recorded in the land records. However, they do. I'm sorry, the charter has to be approved by the Maryland Department of Assessments and Taxation. So in a sense, it is recorded among their records, but it's not, and publicly available, but it's not recorded among the land records. The bylaws, and we talked about this a little while ago, the bylaws and the architecture review guidelines fit the description of rules, regulations, whatever term else you want to apply to it, that are binding or enforceable against the members of the association. And for them to be publicly available and enforceable, they have to be filed in the Homeowners Association Depository in Snow Hill. So each of the governing documents, the DRs are recorded among the land records, the bylaws and the ARC guidelines are in the public record in Snow Hill, so that each of those three governing documents are available publicly without you have to getting them from the association itself. And the two that are in the depository, they have to be the current ones, or whatever is current provision that may be in question isn't enforceable. You have to have the enforceable, or not enforceable, you have to have the current to be enforceable in the Snow Hill depository. So in that sense, the ARC guidelines, no, they are not a governing document, but they are an enforceable document as long as you've got them in the Snow Hill HOA depository.
The reason I ask is because in the document, in the opening introduction of the guideline document, it tells the story of the name change.
Yeah.
So it sort of documents the fact that the name was changed in 2000 from the ECC to the ARC, and that it's still referred to as the ECC in the Declaration of Restrictions, but that this document and associated documents will refer to it as the ARC. So I just wondered if, from a legal standpoint, this document would be considered the tying, the glue that would hold these two ideas together from an interpretation standpoint.
Okay, well, that's a valid question that we can ask, because you can hear once in a while a voice from the wilderness that says, I don't know anything about an ARC committee. It's the ECC that's in the Declaration of Restrictions. So I'm kind of laughing, but I probably shouldn't. But that's a question we can put in there.
Yeah, page 5 clearly tells this story. So I think that would be a good thing to bring to the lawyer's attention, is how much weight does that carry? Because if that carries significant weight, then that ties the two together. And then if that legally ties the two together, then we have a conflict, because we have one document that says you can't affect them, and you have another document that says you can. So
what we would want to make sure that would be avoided is that there be some kind of unresolved situation with regard to an ARC guideline provision, and winds up making its way through the legal process and a contention in which the violation is referenced entirely in ARC terms, and the contention is that the violation makes no mention whatsoever of action by an environmental control committee, which is in the governing document for this particular situation. So therefore, there's no provision applicable. I'm kind of making that up, but as to how that would potentially work its way out. But that, if you would, Keith, when I get off our request for more comments, add that one to it for us.
Okay.
Jim, can I ask Bob one other question? Bob, I've been sitting here scrolling through my emails, and what I've got from Jim on 5-4 is the proposed list of changes that was put forth by the work group. You said there was something else that he sent out that day about inquiries to the attorney? Oh, you're muted, Bob.
Camilla, somewhere I hear I've got what Bob is referring to.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, you,
I can dig it out and
And just send it back to me again.
send it back to you.
Okay.
That would have been the initial contact on this subject, and then we're going to follow up here again with additional comments or questions as we may have here. But I'll send that out,
Okay.
the original out, so we can have the original and go from there. As a matter of fact, I'll make sure I send it to everybody so that we all have it, and then we can the committee can add to it as necessary, and you'll have the beginning and the add to it at a later date. All right, the ARC part of the agenda. Do we have anything more that we want to? We pretty well hacked that around for the time being. Okay, I'm looking at the time here so we don't keep running over. The next, what I'm going to do is go down to the ranking of the various provisions. That's the May 11th document. I don't know how Josh is doing here as far as maybe putting that up. The next one on that list, looks like maybe we're going to have it come up here in a minute. Okay. Next one is the maximum number of votes. Let me give a brief background on this. What we're into now is figuring out how to proceed from here, from this one on. We're underway. Maybe fits and starts on the first two. Now we're not underway on basically on anything else. And my intention is not to discuss these items one by one and maybe even skip around a little bit. But taking this one, let me give a brief background. So again, we're all on the same page to the maximum extent we can do. A couple of the items in the work group submittal to us are items which have required some form of interpretation of the bylaws, in particular interpretation by the attorney. One of them, which is not the one we've got highlighted here, it comes on, I think actually next, is the eligibility to be a candidate. And that particular issue did result in litigation by an individual who was determined to be ineligible to be a candidate. Did result in litigation, but the litigation was ultimately withdrawn. So however, there's no judicial determination of the wording in the bylaws. It continues to be an interpretation ruling. And that will be that particular issue will be addressed in the next item after this one. This one pertains to the number of signatures required on a petition for a referendum. The bylaws require, I'm just going to refer to one type of petition. In one particular category, petition requires that the signatures must be equal or exceed 10% must be from members eligible to vote of 10% of the maximum votes that can be cast. That's I think that maximum number of votes that can be cast is actually extracted from the bylaws. So the signatures must equal or exceed 10%, didn't say equal or exceed, I guess it just says equal. The maximum number of votes that can be cast. What was the meaning or is the interpretation of that phrase? That was a part of the opinion that the attorney gave to the, I'm not sure, I think it may have come directly to you, Camilla, but came to at least to the board or to yourself, that the interpretation was the number of, the 10% would be of the number of votes, eligible votes, the number of eligible votes at the time the petition was filed.
Exactly.
The choice is,
Got that data.
yeah, the choice is, or would be 10% of the eligible votes on the date of the filing, or 10% of the maximum number of votes that exist in the association at the time the petition is filed. In other words, without regard to any eligibility. The opinion given was the 10% of the eligible votes on the date of filing. There has been some comment on that. I think one director in particular has raised a question about that. And I know that there's been some comment, you want to call it forum comment, as to whether or not that was the correct interpretation. In any event, it is an interpretation. And the question is it satisfactory to remain as an interpretation? Or should there be a clarification in there as to what that 10%, what does maximum number of votes mean in more specific terms that do not require an interpretation? I have done some research on this in a couple of different ways. One is, it appears to me to be simply a policy decision. I don't think we're going to find any statutory interpretation of those words that would fit, nor would we find any case law understanding of what those words mean. Do they mean all votes available without regard to eligibility, or only eligibility or votes eligible? So it's a policy decision. Now, so we got a couple of different things to think about. Do we want to stay with the interpretation, or do we willing to look into it from the standpoint of what would be an appropriate policy? I'm going to skip ahead here a little bit. Anybody wants to add in here, or I'll call it participate, add comments now or later, fine. I welcome that. I would like to go ahead between now and the next meeting and have available at the next meeting my own review of this provision and how it can be applied.
Good.
I kind of want to slowly and not be too far out ahead of anything, but I have given it some thought. I think there are considerations that may not have been. There have been elements or circumstances or information that was not taken into consideration in the original opinion. I'll just say it that way. But in the end, it truly is, from my look at it so far, I need to do a little bit more look at it. It really is a policy decision. There's no legally right way for it to be that I can tell by statutory law or case law. You're not going to find it's right this way and it's wrong that way. It's a policy decision. And the question would be, what if we're going to recommend a change, what policy decision would we be recommending to the board? So again, I would like to volunteer myself to make an input to everybody for consideration by the board next time. And I don't want.
Do you have Westlaw, Jim?
I do. I'm sorry.
Do you have Westlaw?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't want to. If anybody else has an interest in digging into this in detail, I don't certainly want to discourage that. The more the better. Let's
Okay.
put it
No,
that way.
I mean, if I needed to send you a copy of Westlaw for case review, I'd be more than happy to do it. But if you've got it, so much the better.
Go ahead.
Okay.
All right. That's what I'll do between now and the next meeting. I have copious notes. I will get them in a form that is more than written in pencil on several sheets of paper and get it out to everybody. That's the whole committee and Camilla as well.
Okay.
Hey, Jim,
Yeah.
could you send out your draft of that, maybe a week prior to the meeting so that we've got an opportunity to read through it and kind of digest it?
I make all kinds of promises. If I can't get it out well before a week, you guys can turn me out to pasture. Yes, I'll be working on it. It won't take me a whole lot of time to get my thoughts are pretty firm. Let's put it that way already.
I have one question, Jim. Jim, I have one question. The
Yeah.
total votes in the association will never change.
That's
But
right.
the eligible votes can change daily, so wouldn't it make more sense to go with total votes available? And it's a higher number to achieve if you want to get a referendum.
Bob, I'm laughing. The reason why I'm laughing, of the various points that you will see when I send something out, that will be the final point.
Okay.
Let me take 30 seconds and explain that comment a little bit. We
Okay.
recently had a petition to referendum, and the eligible votes when the petition I'm going to say this wrong. It turns out that the eligible number of votes was probably the highest of any point in the association you're going to get, because the actual voting, the eligibility is at 35 days before the counting of the votes. And the 35 days, the counting, I think it was something like May 13th, the counting of the votes 35 days prior, that takes you back to what, about the 13 and 22, you're into the early part of April. Well, April is the last month of the fiscal year, so you're at the highest, virtually the highest number you're ever going to get of eligible voters. But what happens if you wait until May 2nd to submit that petition? I'm not sure. I guess we haven't got the latest assessment status for the start of the current fiscal year, but the eligible votes as of the beginning of this fiscal year is going to be well under what the eligible votes for that referendum. And that's the point I think you're making, or within the point that you're making. And the major fluctuation in what would make a successful application, or not application, submittal of a petition in terms of how many signatures are required. It could be almost half the number of votes, I'm sorry, half the number of signatures required on May 2nd as were required for the petition for the voting, which would be eligible voters for the referendum that we held. The eligible voters is the same thing. And the major difference between what was eligible for the referendum and what would have been eligible signatures on May 2nd would have been significant.
Jim,
Yeah.
can I ask a question? And I apologize. I'm having like 10 people here for dinner in 2 hours, and I'm in my kitchen cooking while we're talking. So if you see me wander off, I'm just husking corn. But nonetheless, I think that if I hear what you're saying correctly, is that you believe, and I'm just being blunt, that you believe that Jeremy made a mistake in defining what the eligible voters or the eligible people to sign the petition. Is that where your initial thinking goes on this?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll now that I said that, I'll just preface the what will be circulated. Just one aspect of the preface that will be circulated.
Okay.
If you go back to the pre-2008 bylaws, these provisions we're talking about are only in the 2008 bylaws.
Okay.
The provision prior to 2008 clearly was written so that it would be 10% of all of the votes that existed in the association. I don't remember exactly how it's phrased now, but there would have been no question as to how it should have been interpreted.
Okay, I think that's a really important work to undertake because there were some very bad feelings about this and who had paid their assessments. People were knocked off that had not paid their assessments, et cetera. So yeah, I do think this is a priority. We really need clarity around that issue.
Well, it should be clear also that there is no change on being a valid signature. You have to be, at the time the petition is filed, the signature has to be of one who is eligible to vote, or the lot is eligible to vote. The owner of the lot just casts the vote. So there's no change in the eligibility of the signer. The question is how many votes is the 10% taken of to determine how many signatures are required.
Right. Okay.
But okay. Any further? Now that I've given you the verbal version of what you're going to see in another couple of weeks, there'll be a little more detail in it than that. But yeah, that's it. The basic question to kind of finish up what I just said. The basic question is there any real basis for saying there was a change because the wording was changed in the number of votes basing the 10% on? Was there any real reason to change the interpretation? And I frankly see none, but that will be something to talk about. Okay, let's, I think we should try to not eliminate, but keep this to 2 hours, and we're coming pretty close to that 2 hours. So we may need to slow down here. Before it gets forgotten, I'm proposing to enter into our consideration of a change to the bylaws, a new topic at the Executive Council meeting, in which I think I indicated in my message. There were some comments among the committee chairs about why couldn't a renter be a member of a committee? Now, to put that a little bit in context, when that was not expressed in the context of a renter for the 4th of July weekend, or the 4th of July weekend, or Memorial Day weekend, or 2 weeks in the summer, that kind of thing. Someone who has some degree of long-term commitment to the association in the sense of renting a property. And I agreed to go ahead and add that to our list of considerations. One of the reasons for doing that is if you look at the committee section in the bylaws, we do make provision for employees to be on committees with the qualification or limitation rather that they cannot be a voting member of a committee. Now, I'm aware of at least one circumstance. This goes back many years. It was actually an ad hoc committee, not a resolution committee. It was in the original consideration of the M01 compliance resolution. Two committee members were, one was the public works director at the time, because that's where a lot of that work would fall in terms of compliance, and another was an actual CPI inspector. That CPI inspector actually happened to be at the time a member of the association. So I'm aware of at least that situation in the past. I think the Aquatics Committee may have had or has, for all I know now, somebody sitting in on the meetings at least, maybe not an actual committee member. I don't know for sure that, and that would have been not in a context necessarily of a person who is leasing property. But at any rate, there is some provision for non-members of the association to be on committees. And the bylaws do require that you be a member, except for that employee exception. So I agreed to add that to the list of our considerations. Now there are a number of things we're going to have to consider in that, and again we're running out of time. What I'll do, does anybody have any problem with entering that onto an item? Go ahead, Keith.
Well, no, I don't have any problem with entering it into the discussion.
Okay.
But I do have a comment.
Go ahead. I was very briefly going to say, among the considerations is what's the term length of commitment that what demonstrated commitment to the association does the person have to have? And then you have the voting, non-voting issue that would have to be considered, term length, that kind of thing. All that kind of thing would have to be considered. Now, those kinds of things can be put in a resolution. The CO1 committee resolution that talks about terms and chairman and duties and creating resolution. I'm not sure it says creating a resolution for committees, but that kind of detail could be put in the CO1 resolution as to having renters of some kind of commitment, whether they can vote, can't vote, what terms, that sort of thing. That can all be covered in that. But those are the considerations that will have to go into our discussion later on. But I'll add that to the list of what we're talking about.
Hey, Jim, can I just make one comment?
Sure.
Or I guess ask a question, really. So all these meetings are public meetings, are they not?
Oh, yeah.
So anybody can attend this meeting, can they not?
Oh, yes. I don't know that we make express provision for non-association members to attend meetings, but they are public meetings. I know that at board meetings, we don't recognize non-association members. There have been a couple of very rare exceptions where that's made. And I'm not talking about somebody who's been invited to appear before the board. And that's the purpose for asking the address of the individual who's making public comments.
Right. So that was my next question. So during these meetings, when we open it up to public comment, is it truly the public that we're soliciting comment from, or is it association membership?
It's really members. Saying public has been kind of a force of habit. And I don't recall this committee ever having changed that. Although I'm not sure without looking at a board agenda whether it says public or member comments now.
It says public.
As public, okay. Okay.
So then just for consideration for future discussion, Josh, is the link to these meetings made available to the association in general, such
Yes.
that any association member who decided they wanted to attend the meeting and listen in, that they could?
Yes.
How is that published?
In advance or afterwards?
In advance of the meeting, how is the association made aware this meeting's going to occur, and if they want to attend it, they can?
If you're talking about a committee meeting, the only place you'll really find that is on the calendar on the website. If you're talking about a board meeting, that's put everywhere we can. It's put on the website. It's put in the weekly e-blast. It's put on Facebook. It's sent to press. It's sent to public officials.
But for
It's
all the
shared
committee
everywhere.
meetings,
Yeah,
but for all the
only on the
committee meetings,
calendar.
it's on the calendar.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So maybe if what my understanding, Keith, and what you're saying is, if we truly want to make sure we're getting member, participation, we need to re-advertise and say, if you want to sit in on any committee's meetings, you're not gonna vote on anything, you're not gonna comment, you're just going to kind of listen, whatever. Then we need to be promoting and letting them know they can find the links to these virtual meetings on the calendar, because that I don't recall seeing. Josh is very good about posting all the links after a meeting has been held, or even to promote and say, hey, you want to watch this lovely bylaws committee meeting on YouTube? Um, 2 hours of fun for you. But you know what I mean? That I'm betting that there's probably a lot of members who don't even realize or know where on the website to go find it. And I'm a Facebook girl, so I love all the links posted on Facebook, that kind of stuff. So maybe we just need occasionally to say, hey, are you interested in seeing what these committees are discussing? Here's how to go find their links, and
Right.
or when our meeting dates are. And then if we're in person, that's one option. If we're virtual, that's another option.
Right. And Jim almost always in the agenda has a moment where he opens it for public comment if he sees that there's the public available. So they
Right.
could comment as well. They just couldn't necessarily vote or participate in debate, but they could, if they had something that they wanted to say and contribute, they could do that. So yeah, that's exactly what I think.
So maybe that's part of is that fall under the communications committee? Or is
Well,
that
I think it's
a
just,
Mr. Josh thing,
I
or
think it's,
whoever?
I think if more people understood
Mhm.
that maybe this question about whether or not renters can participate in meetings, maybe it would be helpful for them if they didn't know that they can actually, to a certain extent, participate in these meetings live and provide comment and listen and understand how the process works and how decisions are made, and that just might be helpful for membership and long-term renters in general.
Yeah, I don't
Because
want to get,
at the upcoming town hall, are they going to allow, is a renter then considered a member enough to make a comment if they wanted to do the long-term town hall that's scheduled? Because I got the impression the last time anybody who was not an actual owner, whether they lived here full-time or part-time, was not allowed to speak during the
Yeah.
town hall. So
Yeah.
I think
That's
that
correct.
really needs to be clarified then, that if we're going to allow renters to come and participate, even this way, just to be a visitor on a committee, then who's to say they couldn't make a comment during a town hall about that very topic that might, be important to them.
okay, I don't want to, at the risk of opening up a discussion that could go from now till the wee hours, Camilla, I don't know if this is something that the board needs to give any thought to, or who may need to give thought to, but we're really into something here that can get kind of technical or whatever however you want to phrase it, because if you read the charter, there is what's called an associate membership. An
Right.
associate membership is someone who has occupancy rights for whatever length of time. You rent a place, it's short-term rental this weekend. You're an associate member for the duration of your occupation, the term that you have proper legal occupation. You're an associate member, and when an associate member has all the rights of an actual member, except they can't vote. If there's an election or some membership vote of some kind, they cannot vote. Otherwise, if you want to go down and play golf, you're here for the weekend, you go down the golf course, play golf, whatever the walk-up rates are for a member of the association, you get it. Same thing with the aquatics. You go down and use the pool, whatever the walk-in rates for a member, you get the rates for a member, not a off the street walk-in from somebody to in Pennsylvania or wherever. So there is an associate membership rights situation, and could at the town hall an associate member say something about the short-term rental situation? I'm not gonna offer that any opinion whatsoever.
Well, I think I'm gonna put that out to people at the close of this meeting, because we bandied about, if I recall correctly, and I'm not sure I did, but it seems that we've had long discussions about the term associate member. What does that really mean? And I can't ever recall a time that we came to closure on that issue. So I need to look at that again, Jim, but I think it's really opening a can of worms, as I think we're all saying here, so.
Yeah, well, it is a defined term in the charter.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty clear.
Yeah, because if they're allowed all benefits except voting, then you could sort of infer that means they are allowed to comment.
Yeah.
And
Well,
if they're
you're right. You're right, Keith. You're absolutely right.
Okay, well, I think we need to kind of move on here. We're right at we're past our 2 hour. It's not a limit, but what we pretty well try to aim for. The next item on our discussion here is our meeting schedule. And very quickly, there's two considerations right now. The next meeting, first of all, would be July 2nd, which is Friday before the 4th of July on Sunday, and I'm not sure that's a very good date. It's unlikely that my family's going to be doing anything anywhere of importance on that day, but
concur.
I think we probably need to reconsider another date.
How about the following Friday, the 9th?
Following Friday would be okay with me. Does anybody have any thoughts on the date on the following Friday, which would be the 9th?
I'm good with that.
Okay.
I think I have a court date that day, but that doesn't mean that I can't. I've got to check let me go check my calendar. Well, my calendar's right here.
I will be out of town on that day, so if we could still do virtual, I can do it.
Okay, that's going to be another thing we need to talk about here real quick as well.
We are spending more time here, but of course, that's the one time we have to go back to our full-time house for about 10 days. So then I'll be back. But
Okay.
so.
And let me throw one more question in this while we're all looking at our schedules. We've got quite a to-do list ahead of us.
Yeah, that's right.
We'll be able to get this done with only one meeting a month.
We could very well be on a 2 meetings a month situation.
July 9th is fine with me.
Okay, let's go with the 9th, and then let's seriously talk about an accelerated schedule at the 9th. I don't know that we need to try to make that decision today. And again, we're short one member because she has a unavoidable business conflict at the last minute. Okay, we also have to confront virtual versus in-person. More and more in-person meetings are going on. The executive council meeting last week, whatever night that was, Wednesday, I believe, a week ago Wednesday, was in person. And no particular social distancing. I am fully vaccinated and have been for several months now, so I have become more and more comfortable resuming a somewhat more normal existence, going out and doing a couple of things that I would not have done up until the last month and a half or so, for probably a year or more. How does everybody feel? And the question for Josh is, what kind of limitations are we on here with regard to that kind of thing? I guess he's still here.
I'm not aware of any limitations at all right now for meeting in person.
Well,
It's more convenience, the people that continue to meet virtually.
okay. Yeah, and I don't think we can continue to go on that convenience. But I'm okay with going with the next meeting virtual, but we need to get serious about both additional meetings, 2-a-month meetings, for example, and in-person meetings next month. That we need to probably put that at the top of the list instead of the bottom of the list for our next meeting. How does everybody feel about that?
I'm good with that. I think I brought this up once before, but even if we go back to face-to-face meetings, I wish there was a way that if for some reason our schedule conflicted and we couldn't physically be there, that we could still call in.
Oh yeah, we can.
We can do that. We do have a phone bank that any committee can use at any time. There's also a hybrid system that's been installed in the boardroom. Now, whether or not they're going to let committees use that is unclear, but that could be an option.
I will say personally, I do better in the virtual setting, not just because of physically being in Ocean Pines or not, but I hear much better. I struggle really hard to hear in the boardroom. So I did attend one of the recent meetings that was held in person, and I know I was asking the guy doing the recording, did they say this? Was that you?
That was me.
So for personal reasons, I like the virtual because I can put my earbuds in and I can hear each of you fine. If we meet in person, just be prepared that I may say what a lot. But the biggest issue for virtual for me is just because I'm not totally full-time here yet. So I'm okay with meeting in person when I am in town. I can't promise I could be there for every single meeting. So in those cases, having a hybrid option or doing virtual is very much appreciated.
Okay. Josh, I didn't see. Where did that comment come from?
No, I think that's Bob echoing again.
Oh, okay.
Bob, I think your volume's up a little bit too high.
Okay, let me turn the mic.
We'll get you some earbuds for the next one.
I don't use earbuds and don't have any. Let me turn the volume down.
Oh, look at
Does that help?
All right.
There you go.
Okay, for right now, we're on for the 9th of July, virtual meeting. Topics at that meeting, as I said, I think I'll put it at the very top of the agenda, will be what about accelerated schedule, meaning like two meetings a month, and also to again, seriously consider, when do we transition to in-person meetings, and how are we going to go about doing that? Josh, is the telephone remote communication, is that available in the meeting rooms over in the community center?
Yeah, that's where it is right now, actually.
Is it in the SD room, or is it in the meeting room?
It's portable. It's portable. It's,
Oh, okay.
you know,
All right.
pretty small.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, that. I'm going to stop us there on going further on the work group list, or the ranking of items. With one exception, the fourth item on there is the eligibility topic. That's the other one in which there had to be an opinion or an interpretation given, which then went to a litigation status, but never was resolved in litigation. That's one I think we can discuss as we meet. We don't have to have a lot of preparation other than understand what it's all about. When I gave some background in a prior communication back as much as 2 meetings ago, I'll dig that out again and maybe elaborate on it some in preparation for any discussion next meeting. This is something that needs to be rewritten. The question is how to rewrite it, and we need to make sure we understand what it is, what the proposal is, and what some of the hidden pitfalls might be in regard to referencing other sections of the bylaws. But that can be an item for the next meeting, in addition to the maximum number of votes issue specific to consider for the next meeting. At any rate, we're down to the governor's document review, and unfortunately, we tend to go through this real quick. And as I said, we're now working our way well past our objective to go with a 2-hour long meeting.
I'm cooking dinner. I love these virtual meetings.
Well, I was going to say that that's another plus for virtual. You can kind of multitask when you're participating, right?
I have husked my corn.
I have trouble keeping the tasks ahead of us or on us here are organized, not multitasking. I've got a marked up copy of the governing documents review, which is basically a resolution review or an update document, at any rate, in front of me. Just looking at them in the category of resolutions, the B resolutions, and just as a side comment, the B, C, F, M, so forth, the reason for the identifier or the description of the identifier is in fact in the B01 resolution. So that's why you have that alpha prefix. I don't believe that there is any changes that can be made to the B resolutions at this time. Camilla, there's something that I completely bypassed here. The B07 is the petitions resolution. We just went through a petition process. May not have been the cleanest process in the world, but we just went through one. It is overdue for its review, and it would be timely to do a review at this point in time. And again, this is a board resolution as to how the board wants it a petition to be handled, one of the I guess the major issue in the litigation was the wording of the petition. And I think that wording probably closely mirrored what's in B07. So I don't know if it would be appropriate. This is a board consideration for the attorney to look at this and say, hey, we really think it ought to read this way, or recommend a different wording or something based on the experience with the litigation for exactly, this would be exactly why. But B0,
Why don't we
B0, I'm sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
Why don't we take this back to our work group?
Okay. That's fine with me.
I'd like to see us hash it out and then we can make a recommendation to the board. I think that, the more prepared we are to come with it, the quicker we're going to get it through.
Okay. Well, Bob, could you make a notation for that, to that effect on B07? I think we've got Bob muted. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I'm
he's
gonna-
muted.
Okay, well, I'm gonna keep going on here, assuming Bob can hear me.
Okay, what was the comment for B7? 07?
It's gonna be referred to the bylaws work group for consideration.
Okay. Okay,
In C03, I have not received a response for our request for comment. I need to follow up on that. Okay, C04, that can be updated. We're going to be sending this to the board. That's our resolution, Bylaws and Resolutions Advisory Committee. Okay, in C06, that continues to be, the chair has indicated that they are reviewing changes to their resolution, but they need more meeting time to be able to finalize what they think they want to be doing. So, but that is actively under consideration. It probably can remain the same. The Elections Committee, I think we can take out the bylaws work group review and wait for the completion of the next election cycle. The Elections Committee has to submit an elections report after the election is completed, and at that time, it would be appropriate to review that resolution. We can wait. We make a notation to hold until completion of the 2021 election.
okay.
If I had not got there, C10 is the same situation. I've not received a response yet. All right, now I'm going to have to offer everybody my apologies. When I went through to check what I had done and not done, I have not requested a review from the Maritime Activities Committee. So I am delinquent on that, and I need to get that out. Why don't you put in there by the next our July meeting?
Okay,
Same thing, not same thing, but C13, I've not received a response yet. That needs to be followed up. And the rest of that can remain the same for the C committees. Okay, Camilla has follow-up on FO2 and FO3. That was it earlier at the very beginning of our meeting.
okay,
On M01, it's due next month, and I doubt that we're going to ask her for a review next month. And this is just for information purposes. The M01 reason why the date has been set out to July 21 to begin with is the pandemic has interfered, was interfering, and it continues to interfere with regard to implementing the provisions that went into it and that rather comprehensive review that goes back, I guess it was back into May of last year. One of the things that is holding up the enforcement provisions of the M01 is that the direction in M01 is that when there is a violation reported, the individual, the owner of the property in violation is notified of it and is given an opportunity for a meeting with, here again, the art committee to review the violation and perhaps work out any agreement to resolve the violation that may be necessary, object to it, whatever may come forward to at that committee, perhaps ask for variation or got the other term, not exclusion, but an exemption, variation or exemption from the provision. And if there is no satisfactory resolution at that time, the art committee is to forward it to the general manager, who in turn takes it to the attorney for enforcement. The prior provisions of M01 was the attorney to write a letter, or need to go through some kind of a process like this. The current M01 says no resolution, goes to the GM, goes to the attorney is supposed to take it directly to enforcement. That is not, or at least it has not been, as far as the last week meeting with the executive council, not really possible. Because the courts are backed up and prioritizing court actions. This kind of action simply does not have a priority. So we're still at effectively writing a letter to say, I don't know the exact contents of the letter, but in the past it's been, you need to resolve this by such and such a date, or we have the right, or we will seek further action to have it resolved. That old process effectively is remaining in place, and it can be expected to remain in place for some indefinite period of time. So that would be a major reason for reviewing M01, and it just is not there to be reviewed at this point. We can mark that up next month just to be doing it when it's due. Okay, the next two comments are M05 and M07. Again, those are we were reviewed with Camilla for her action earlier in the meeting. Elections, sessions. Okay, it can come off of the hold because of the bylaws changes. Leave the comment there that there were some comments made from this committee that need to be followed up. It in particular pertains to the coding that was on the ballot that I believe was to be a part of the ballot non-duplicate, or to avoid duplicate ballots. The process used last time was not what's in the M06. So, I don't know what kind of discussion, if any, they've had of the elections committee, and I'll follow up with them. I don't have anything further. Is any other comments on the resolutions? Okay, Bob, if you can update that, and we'll
Yep.
send it around, everybody take a look at, and we'll have it for the next meeting.
Okay.
All right, guys, it's been kind of a long meeting. And it's Friday afternoon. Happy hour approaches. I've long since not gotten much into happy hour. All right, we'll be seeing each other, if not before, on July 9th. And if
Okay.
don't see or hear from you, well, we got communications back and forth between now and the 4th of July, but everybody have a good 4th of July.
Okay, Jim.
Any objections to unanimous adjournment at 3:26? Okay, I'm going to say we unanimously adjourned at 3:26 p.m. today.
Okay.
All right, thank you,
Thanks.
guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.